Hey guys, it's Shama here, CEO of Scaling Retail, here for another weekly edition of Retailing Weekly. I seem to always have technical difficulties when trying to get this going. So here we are on Google Hangouts. So thanks guys for joining me this week. Lots of really cool and exciting things happening. I'm coming to you from New York City. Scaling Retail has offices in New York, in Los Angeles, and it's always a pleasure to be back here for Fashion Week. But today, we are not talking about Fashion Week. We are talking about some other really interesting things in the market. The first thing I wanted to report on is something that Bloomberg really discussed, which has to do with the number of stores that H&M plans to close this year. They are planning on closing and opening a record number of locations. They're planning to close 170 shops, open a total of 390 new ones. This announcement did cause the stock prices of H&M to fall almost at 10 points. Now, one thing that's really interesting is a lot of the investors and people are wondering, well, you're opening and closing so many stores. Why is that? What does that mean? Is that good for business? Is that bad for business? I actually take a really interesting perspective. I actually think being nimble and agile and making sure that your products are in the right market, making sure that you're innovating on store designs, store layout, trying out different concept stores. That's really going to be the way to find what's going to work for tomorrow's consumer. So what's interesting is H&M every year has closed stores and opened new stores. And what scares investors and scares people on a board is, well, what does that volatility mean, right? Why are stores opening and stores closing? Well, honestly, guys, I do believe that year over year, comp growth and looking at innovation and how you're going to continue to push a brand forward does require you to stay on top of location, and brick and mortar is a huge opportunity for these guys. So it is very important, I believe, that we continue to see brands push forward, closing down stores, opening up new locations, as opposed to maybe even just exiting. We've seen a lot of brands exit brick and mortar. I think perhaps another attempt at that would be how to reposition and rethink about brick and mortar in terms of a longer term strategy. So I think that there's a really interesting phenomenon here. And I think it's going to be cool to see how the P&L statement changes from H&M once they actually go through and enact all of these store closures and store openings. I think what I would hope to find is that the P&L increases, their profit margins increase, they experiment and try new ways of store design and merchandising, and they find more ways of testing out more localized shops, right? So different ways of kind of getting into communities. I think that would be really great strategically from a brick and mortar standpoint. Now, the other really cool, interesting article had to do with Perry Ellis tapping into tech accelerators to help find talent and solve business problems. And this is actually a topic that we've been covering, kind of talking about for a while, which is, retail's transition and move towards integrating new technologies. Now, what's really fascinating here on the technology side is it's important that we realize that technology does need a testing ground. And so a lot of big box retailers actually kind of steer clear and shy away from making technological investments because they're not sure on the ROIs. However, partnering with an incubator or a tech startup is an amazing way for not only the tech startups to be able to get some real world activation, prove ROI, but it's also great for brands who are looking to find new and innovative ways of getting on the forefront, really getting on the forefront of what consumers are looking for. Now, Perry Ellis is certainly not the first company to go ahead and do this, right? They've actually have lots of other tech fashion startups that are looking to bridge the connection between retailers, brands, and certainly new technologies. Now, as far as how technology companies should be approaching this, or what the accelerators really mean, it's kind of two mindsets, right? So you have the tech startups that are actually providing technological retail solutions that are far more on the SaaS program, right? It's all systems and software, right? And then you also have these startups that are really geared towards fashion designers, right? And incubators for fashion design. Now, the thing that I find to be a little challenging when it comes to fashion designers, and this is really more for brands out there, is if you're going into an incubator program or platform, you have to be really clear about who owns the brand, right? How much of that brand is yours? Are you giving out equity shares of the business to all of these stakeholders who eventually are going to be, primary drivers in a lot of your decision-making processes? What is the team that you're kind of amassing together, and are they all going to be pushing the brand forward in the way that you want to push the brand forward? So what's fascinating is that when we think about how brands are evolving or what's happening in terms of new innovation, yes, you do need strong business strategy. Yes, you do need connections with production, marketing, manufacturing, all of these things. But it's really important to ask yourself who's kind of driving the head of these brands, right? And really, is it the incubator that is going to have X amount of percentage of say, et cetera? So really think about kind of the fine tune on the fashion designer standpoint. I am very much pro-choice as far as the technology standpoint and pro kind of making that connection. But as far as designers, I'm going to say that these fashion incubators, in my perspective, may leave these designers with a little bit of less options than they think they have. And while they might see their designs come to market, it doesn't exactly put them in the best position to be the strongest CEO for their business, right? So there's a lot of learning that's kind of involved in that process. And you may end up with a product that you love, that's your own. You may end up with a product that you don't love because it has slowly become something else and not really what you wanted. So little heeds of warning on that front. Another really cool, marketing announcement and launch that Women's Wear Daily broke was the story of Benefit's new mascara launch, where they apparently spent about $10 million on influencer programs. It was a multi-country launch, so they launched globally, different activations across China, activations obviously in the US and Europe. And what's really fascinating, I think, about this new product launch is it is one of the strongest concerted efforts between not only experiential, digital, and influencer collaboration. And Benefit Cosmetics has actually been doing this for a little while now. They started really doing a big push on influencer marketing back in 2016. And now with this new launch of the new mascara, they're hoping to be able to reach about $100 million in sales from a $24 product within its first year. Now, of course, guys, as we all know, launching big marketing efforts take time. In fact, these guys were looking at these different influencers all the way back in third quarter of last year. So it's been some time, right, to really lay out the foundation for this. But the biggest takeaway that they are doing that I think is really applicable across different retail channels is starting to take a look at really these 360-degree marketing experiences. No longer is it just experiential and just pop-up, or is it just digital? It's really important that we think about product and brand launches from a 360-degree standpoint, and that we start to build out those strategies early, right? It's not simply that you've got a digital launch and now you think you need to do a pop-up shop. There really needs to be a strong marketing directive coming from the tops down and working in tandem with your sales partnerships and distribution counterparts. So what's really exciting is that Benefit is really embracing this, right? They are including more influencer programming. And one of the trends we've been seeing, guys, is influencer programming is becoming really at the core heart of a lot of sales and marketing tools. So it's, again, not just simply who's promoting the product on digital, but including influencers into your experiential, including them into your campaigns, and really starting to build more synergistic brands, looking at influencers as almost like the 1990s supermodels, right? Or the big drive towards celebrity, right? And working with Hollywood. So influencers are taking on their own field of entertainment. They're taking on their own sector, and they are having a lot more say in collaboration in terms of marketing campaigns across multiple channels, right? So as you look to activate influencer marketing, look to see how those partnerships can really help to expand across multiple channels. Okay, this next thing is really interesting, especially because I've been working on my talk for Vegas for Magic for next week. And one of the things that's really interesting, the concept is called rethinking retail. And, Women's Wear Daily just came out. They said that, 2017, mobile commerce hit 1.35 million. E-commerce globally hit just over $2.3 trillion globally. And all of that sounds really amazing, right? We certainly know as retailers that we've got to be digital, right? We've got to have a footprint, a digital footprint. However, I was just reading the other day in the Harvard Business Review, they were talking about conversion on websites, right? So we talk about sales, we don't really talk about traffic and how much percentage of the traffic we're actually converting. Now, one of the lowest average benchmarks for e-commerce conversion is 1.3%, with the top 25% coming in at, I think it's top 25% coming in at 6.25, and the top 10% coming in at 6.25, and then the top 25% coming in at around 4%. So when we think about these things like conversion and traffic optimization and click-through conversion, and we see sales numbers like, okay, $2.3 trillion is a huge number. It's amazing. However, guys, if you think about optimizing your sales pages, imagine how much more you can convert. Now, the difference between e-commerce conversions and other kind of service sectors is quite high, right? With financial services taking the lead at about 20% conversion online. And so when we start to think about what are the most important strategies and tactics going into 2019, 2020, and beyond, it really does become about landing page conversions, right? It really does become the difference between how many different landing pages are you testing versus what the actual, results are going to be and how you can kind of move the needle in a really big way. And so some of the interesting pieces of information from that HBR article had to do with the number of landing pages you had to test. When we think about kind of the top 20%, the top 10% of pages that convert, right? In order to really maximize that and in order to get and move your conversions incrementally 2 or 3 times, you need to be testing about 10 different landing pages. 10, right? Not just 1 or 2, but 10 completely different landing pages in order to really understand your customer and be testing them by market segmentation. Now, if you want to just kind of make your way and get some significant increase, but maybe not go towards 10, the next ballpark is really testing 4 unique different landing pages. And if you can test 4, it's really incredible because those 4 different pages are going to be able to help direct your business and funnel and traffic into a more highly converting process, right? Which means you'll be going from 1.3% to hopefully all the way up to 6%. And maybe, guys, you'll end up reaching 10%, right? So we really need to be looking at conversion optimization here and not just get so excited about how much money is being made through e-commerce, but also get excited about the low hanging fruit, right? It's not always about doing more externally. Sometimes it's about really optimizing what you have internally. All right, guys, another really cool, interesting announcement that was made by Amazon in a collaboration with Hearst Magazines is a really funny thing. They are bringing back the QR codes, and what they're doing with Amazon is they're calling smile codes, and that is basically QR codes that are put against products, and then you can go ahead and scan your phone and all of a sudden you can purchase the product. Now, this isn't really a new thing, right? I remember back when I was director of merchandising at Aha Life back in 2011, 2012. What was really interesting is they were introducing we were introducing a QR code collaboration with Dwell Magazine, right? So we're now talking about like 6 years ago, this was already kind of taking place. And other different kinds of publications have followed suit to do the same thing. Now, what's interesting here, though, are the choice of magazines that Hearst is offering up for this opportunity, specifically Cosmopolitan and 17, which I think is really interesting because it's kind of focusing on bridging that mobile to physical connection that is still really valuable, right? It is still great. When you also think about, magazines that, let's say, a nail salon, right? Cosmopolitan is usually one of those big prevalent magazines along with like People magazine, right? You get a lot of those weeklies, a lot of those really pop culture, not super fashion publications, hanging out at the nail salon or any other kind of place where there might be a waiting area. So it'll be interesting to see if they can do something cool with the phone scanning, with the QR codes. To be honest, I'm a little bit skeptical. I think that there is a bit of a disconnect between what actual consumers are looking for in publications, how that maybe influences them subliminally on the first level, and then maybe later kind of going back to it. It's a little bit different than, let's say, having a shop now button on an Instagram ad, simply because on Instagram, it's a bit more algorithmically kind of curated to what it is you want to see. Whereas in a magazine, it's like, if you see all these like QR codes everywhere, it might actually detract and take away from the actual layout, visual presentation of it, and may or may not be successful. So that is something I am a little bit doubtful for. I'm not quite sure how well that'll do. And then there's so many other really cool things to talk about in the industry. I'm gonna have to be lean here with the last few points, but talking about my talk next week, I think it's really fascinating that Michela Souza, who is an AI Instagram account, is taking off. And this is really cool because this really kind of falls in alignment with what is an influencer, right? What is the cult of personality, and how can we leverage influencers in order to promote our products, our services, and how we want to present our brands to the world. And so what's interesting here is this Instagram handle is totally made up, right? It's not a real person. Everything about it is artificially curated and created. And so what's fascinating is we might start to see, right, kind of similarly to fake accounts, right, or fake followers and stuff like that. I think it'll be really fascinating to see how more of these AI-driven influencers start to pop up, and what the significance and importance of that might soon be in our marketplace. Right now, this, I want to call her an influencer, which she is, but she's not like a model. It's not a real model. But this influencer is getting amazing branded collaborations, being approached to do things like magazine publications. So I think it's important for us to say, okay, well, is it actually being a physical human being as an influencer that is necessarily the case? And obviously not. So one really cool idea might be to start to think about other types of technology companies that can start to build out these influencers, right? Imagine if brands kind of spearheaded their own influencers, right? And kind of created their own buzz through a manufactured market, right? Like, that's a super cool idea. All right, guys, that's all for me. Hopefully I'll get to see you guys around next week for another episode of Retailing Weekly. And hopefully I won't have as many technical difficulties. So thanks for hanging in there. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.